Today on the podcast, I want to walk you through the more subtle symptoms of perimenopause, what they can look like in day-to-day life, what might be going on underneath, and then most importantly, what you can do about it. Ladies, welcome back to the Nicola Graham podcast. This week's episode and this theme has absolutely come off the back of, again, more conversations that I've been having. I posted something on Instagram maybe just over a week ago talking about how I felt as though I'd lost my mojo, and I really relate to everything that I'm going to talk to you about today. Feeling like I'd lost my mojo maybe a couple of months ago, and then realising that, okay, this is not a me problem, this is hormonal changes, and I've plugged in a few things to get back on course, and I'm feeling all the better for it. But a lot of it was subtle symptoms of perimenopause that I just wasn't acknowledging. You know, like we fight against it up to a point where we're like, no, definitely something has changed. So I posted that and I got quite a few messages and just a lot of women relating to like, oh, this was me. What have you been doing differently? How did you get your mojo back? I've been feeling this way. Did you experience this? And I was like, okay, we need to do a podcast on this. We need to talk about what is really going on, because here's what we're amazing at doing as women. We are amazing at masking what is really going on, ladies. And we're getting in the photographs and we're doing all of the things, but we're not loving what we see. We're not loving how we feel. We're not showing up as our best selves. But we don't really want to admit that we feel like things are changing, because first of all, and I'm going to say this podcast is not to diagnose anyone with being in the midst of perimenopause, but I think sometimes we don't want to put that label on ourselves because it's almost seen as an excuse. I've definitely had clients say to me like, oh, I'm not going to, how was it phrased? I'm not going to play the perimenopause card. I'm sure I should be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's, you know, it's not a card. It's a very real part of every woman's life. And if you are 38 plus, highly likely that you're in the very early stages, or maybe you're already into the full swing of perimenopause. Before we kick off, before we get into all of that, on my Thursday episodes, I like to do a bit of an Unfiltered. Just a little summary of the week that's gone. I am loving the sunshine being out, ladies. Is anybody else feeling as though, like, it's getting real now? Spring is officially begun. Summer, like, we can almost picture ourselves now in the summer dresses and just being out with the picnic blanket. This is my favourite time of year. I know a lot of you will disagree or beg to differ on this. In fact, let me know in the comments. Are you a summer or a winter? I have a lot of women say to me, oh no, I love the winter wardrobe. I love Christmas. No, I am. Put me in a hot climate and I am happy. Just love being outdoors, no shoes on, carefree. Don't really need to make a plan when it's sunny outside. I find like I'm out with the kids and we just wing it. We just see where we end up, versus if it's a miserable day, I feel like we've got to have everything meticulously planned so that we're entertained and, you know, not caught out. Last weekend, I went to my wonderful client's 40th birthday. So I did post about this on socials. So I've worked with Luce for, I want to say the best part of 3 years. And when I say like we've been through the ups, the downs and everything in between, like we really have. And she's become a really good friend, and she's actually now also a really great coach. And so anyway, couldn't get a babysitter after we'd been to the races the week before. Hubby and I obviously were both invited, so I was like, oh, do you know what, I'm just going to go get myself ready. This is my little anecdote and a bit of a question for you all on the end of this. So I'm getting myself ready Saturday night. We'd been out with the kids during the day on Saturday, so come back, get everyone fed, and just whipped up, quickly got myself ready, comes down, and I just had like I had like a cream blazer on, like a bag across, you know, crossbody bag. And Isadora, youngest daughter who's 5, was like, oh, Mum, I don't know if I'm loving the bag. So I said, oh, do you think I need a black one, babe? She's like my little mini stylist. So she was like, no, I think it's the way that you're wearing it. Like, honestly, do not know where she gets this from. I takes it off. It had like a little handle on it. She holds it, you know, very sassy, very particular. She holds it out away from her body, like chin in the air, shoulders back, up on her tippy toes. And she said, Mum, it's more of this. This is what I want to see, Mum. I want to see you hold your bag like this, and I want you to walk like this. And then she just burst into this very confident strut as though she was on a runway, and then she got to the end and done like a big smile. And she was like, I want to see that, Mum. You know, I do my version of like the strut with holding the bag. And she was like, Mum, when you go to the party, I want you to remember confidence, I said, okay, babe. And in my mind, I'm thinking, where is she getting this from? Obviously, it's from me. Penelope, my eldest, just laughing in the background. Mum, I don't want you going in that room and thinking everyone looks great and you don't. Now, that bit she didn't get from me, I want to say. I don't know that language. Anyway, so I got in the car afterwards and I'm driving and I was laughing to myself, and she was just like my little guru, and she's telling me to go and be confident and carry your bag in this way and big smile and make sure you have a dance and do all of the things. She was just having a moment, as kids do. And I got there and I was telling Lucy the story when I got to the party. But as I was driving on the way, I was really thinking to myself, wow, it's true. And I've said this on the podcast before, that our kids absolutely absorb everything. They absorb, they watch the way that we eat, the way that we care for ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves. And like, I'm noticing my language now in my little minis. And so this is almost not a challenge, but an awareness that I would challenge you all to just think on this week, is picking up on your kids' language and notice what they're saying. Because there was something else, and I think it was over the weekend. It was in a swimming lesson actually, and the swimming teacher is asking who's able to do this and who feels confident to do that and who wants to try this. Again, my youngest, definitely a second child thing, is, yeah, I can do it, I'll go for it, I'll have a go, I'm willing to try everything. She doesn't hold back. And potentially it is the whole second child, but also very much the mentality that I've tried to give her is just go for it. Be confident, be self-assured, know your own self. And I really see that coming through. And likewise, we were in like a play centre a couple of weeks ago, and there was a mum and her little boy, and they were doing like maybe the monkey bars or something, and the mum couldn't do it. She couldn't hold her body weight, which is fair enough. It's quite challenging on the monkey bars. But the way she spoke about herself to her little boy, I was dying to say to her, don't speak about yourself like that. Like, speak highly. She was like, oh, mummy can't do this. Mummy's no good. What's mummy like? Mummy's rubbish, isn't she? And it seems harmless, ladies. It seems so harmless when we're talking to ourselves in this way. Like, oh, mummy can't do that. Mummy's rubbish. That just stuck out to me. But it's not harmless. It is the way that we are describing ourselves as being rubbish and as not being any good. And maybe you'll know your own narrative, the way that you might speak with your kiddos or even just in front of your partner. But it's just something to be aware of, because I think, we get caught in the day-to-day, and it's only these little moments when you get that bit of feedback and you realise the way that you're perceived by your kids or by anyone, really. But tune into it this week. Tune into the language of your kiddos. Are they lifting themselves up? Are they putting themselves first? And it won't always be a direct representation of the confidence that you've given them, but we can definitely support and help them. So that's my little Unfiltered for the week. And I'd love to hear your stories too. I know that whenever I speak about my second child, everybody always almost like rolls their eyes and is like, yep, that's second child, we've all got it. And I wondered if it's just because we're so much more relaxed. Once we've got over that, like, shock to the system of baby number one and everything needing to be perfect and every germ needing to be out of the house and everything. And like, baby number two comes along and it's just like, babe, you do you. Go for it. Get stuck in the mud. Put mummy's lipstick on, whatever it is, go for it. Be your best self. And I really see that in Isadora. But honestly, at the weekend, like that pep talk about just walking into the party and being really confident, I think because she knew I was going on my own as well, which I knew some of the girls who were going to be there, so I wasn't technically on my own, but it was a funny moment and it was quite a proud moment. Sometimes I feel as though sharing these moments feels quite vulnerable actually, because it's the stuff that doesn't make it to social media, and then here I am putting it on the podcast. But then I see women in the soft play, like this woman, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is maybe not the normal narrative in every household. Maybe there are some mums out there who are putting themselves down in front of their kids, and so you might relate to that mum. And so I want to talk about it on the podcast, because to every mum who speaks about yourself in that way, we know why this happens, and it's not always your fault, and it's a culmination of many different things and past experiences, and we're just unawares to, or maybe we heard our mums speak to themselves like that, and we're passing it forward. So this is the pattern interrupt. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the flesh and bones of today's podcast, ladies. Perimenopause. I know that we've spoken on this before, but I think it's a real important topic. And I don't want to bring it up once and then not speak about it again for 12 months, because if you are a woman, then at least once a month, we are experiencing heightened symptoms, whether it's just the menstrual cycle or whether it is the start of perimenopause and menopause. So very shortly to brief, what is perimenopause? Well, it's the phase before menopause, essentially, where hormones, particularly estrogen and progesterone, just start to fluctuate. So rather than being nice and steady as they were previously in our early 30s, when we just didn't realise that we were living our best lives, they've now started to fluctuate, and these shifts can really affect everything from mood, sleep, energy, appetite, cycle. Like, I've definitely noticed changes to my menstrual cycle, also to the boobs. Oh my gosh. Ladies, let me tell you, if you are stepping on them scales and you're freaking out about your weight, but your boobs feel like they've doubled in size, well, there's the answer within itself. Honestly, I woke up the other morning, it was like I'd doubled in size overnight, the boobs. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And I'm still 10 days out from cycle. So this is so unfamiliar. And it's like, this is when you know the things are starting to change. But we're trying our best, aren't we? We're trying our best to just show up and rinse and repeat and keep our shit together and, you know, keep the scale weight at a certain number and all of the variables, we want to keep them intact. But then we notice physical changes, like, for example, my boobs have grown overnight. Physical changes, we can't deny that. It's undeniable. And so because these hormones can rise and fall very unpredictably, symptoms also feel very inconsistent. Like, I might not get this same symptom next month. Boobs might be absolutely fine. And I've spoken previously, haven't I, about the 3 weeks that precede the week of menstrual cycle matter more than you realise, because if you can be dialed in and take great care of yourself, and you've got your sleep and your nutrition and your training, and, you know, you're really locked into that self-care for the 3 weeks leading up to menstrual cycle, on paper, we should have an easier cycle in itself. Okay, because that care and attention in that 3 weeks leading up to it really determines how heightened our symptoms are. However, if you're going through perimenopause, then on a month to month, expect that there will still be fluctuations. And I know it just leaves us feeling so out of sorts. And because it's not predictable, because the symptoms are inconsistent, we then instantly feel like something that we are doing is off. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is that. Like, we've got to be very honest with ourselves and know when we could have done more, and when we could have maybe put the mobile phone down instead of scrolling in bed, and we could have drank less caffeine, and we could have reduced the junk food intake or whatever it might be. But we've also got to acknowledge that maybe we need to start having a bit of a different conversation about what we actually need in order to take care of ourselves. So let's get into it. Some of the symptoms that might be showing up that are driving you mad. You think that you're going mad, and I'm going to debunk that myth today, because you're not going mad. It might very well be that things are starting to change hormonally. Symptom number 1 is feeling more tired, but also feeling wired at the same time. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel as though some days I'm shattered at like 4 o'clock, like I feel as though I could sleep on a washing line, and then I come alive at like 8 p.m. So all day I'm thinking I'm going to get an early night tonight. Definitely getting an early night. And then it gets to around that hour, and I feel wired. It's like I get a second wind, and it's like I'm adding hours onto my day. So this can present as, like, exactly as I've just described, like an afternoon crash, feeling like you need caffeine to function, maybe of a morning or mid-morning. Definitely shouldn't be having caffeine of an afternoon, ladies, as we know, perimenopausal or not. Feeling exhausted, but then struggling to switch off. I've got quite a few clients who describe this in different ways in check-ins. You get in bed overnight, you are exhausted, but then getting into that deep sleep or being able to switch off, it's not happening. Or we're waking at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning and our minds are racing. Or I've experienced waking and having heart palpitations, not all of the time, quite scary actually, but whether that's due to body temperature or one thing and another. Night sweats, just your raised core body temperature overnight. Sometimes waking just feeling like very flat of a morning as well. This can be another symptom of perimenopause. Again, it's just related to these hormonal fluctuations And when we talk about being like tired but wired, and then we're trying to figure out, oh, where are we tiring ourselves out? It's not always that we're tiring ourselves out. It's just that our tolerance and resilience is lower than it was before. And this is why I speak so much about recovery. So you can be working out, for example, in the exact same way, but you notice that you're crashing in the afternoon now after your workout where you never were before. Well, there could be a couple of things going on. Obviously, we talk about the lifestyle factors and the nutrition and everything else, and having all of that dialed in. And this is why it's important to acknowledge that nutrition sometimes has to change around training to support these changes, because it's not that you've done anything different in training, but your resilience is now not as it was. So we're tired, we're fatigued, like we're tapping out come mid-afternoon. So that's symptom number one. What can we do about it? So to reduce the tired but wired, definitely, as I've said, less caffeine late in the day. Like honestly, maximum 2 cups, none after 12. But building your nighttime routine. I've got to say, for me, the best thing that I have done and still continue to do is just build out that evening routine and try to stick to it. Try your best to stick to a set bedtime, a set time that you go up, a set time that you come off your screens of an evening. Eating more consistently throughout the day as well. Like, it feels so against the grain, especially if we're coming towards the summer and you're chasing fat loss and you want to keep your calories managed. And we always want to keep that little buffer, don't we, for an evening. We always want to keep those few calories so that we can eat later on, like guilt-free is what we tell ourselves, isn't it? We want to be able to eat guilt-free. But if you want to move away from this constant tired but wired night waking, then actually we need to fuel ourselves better throughout the day and stop letting ourselves off of an evening. When we want to have that little bit of a snack or we want to have that little bit of something, give ourselves very clear boundaries. Like, do you know what? That may have worked before, and maybe we save calories and we do it that way over weekend so that we've got that little bit of flexibility. But during the week, if you're up, you're out, you're in work and you are switched on, we've got to be fueling well during the day. Symptom number 2, this is going to be like the one that I think most of you will nod along to most. And it's just that fat loss feels harder. Even when you are doing everything right, and I say everything right like in the little inverted commas, because everything right is always changing, ladies. I've said this inside of my community this week, is that the game plan, the strategy is always changing. We're always evolving, we're always growing. So you never reach the end goal. In my 43 years, I've never reached the end goal. I've got myself to where I felt confident on my wedding day and I felt great on my 40th birthday and all of these other moments that I was working towards. But that, it's not the pinnacle. Things don't stop there. We're constantly having to adapt and change to life, to hormonal changes, whatever it might be. And so feeling like you're doing everything right, again, it's a pretty lax term because everything right will change along the way. But this presents as weight creeping up. So when I spoke on the post on Instagram about losing my mojo, this was one of the things for me. Like, I just felt as though I was losing control of weight creeping on. And I'm only small in height, so for me it's a couple of pounds. And it was going on my middle, which is not somewhere that I've ever really held weight. And so I could acknowledge that I'd eaten a certain way, and but when you then try and tighten things up and you're like, why am I not adapting and responding and just dropping the weight the way I did as easily as before? Another symptom is just like more puffiness, feeling like you carry more water retention. And don't forget, the point of today's podcast is some of these will be symptoms of perimenopause. But we are blaming ourselves. We're looking for something that we can either do more of, push harder. We want a more intense workout. Like, a lot of clients, they want to know, should I be eating lower calories? Should I be pushing harder? New clients, I should say, when we very first start working together. But it's not the case. I can't stress this enough. Like, pushing harder and being more extreme. Can you imagine if your body is under inflammation and it's less resilient than it was before, and it's going through all of these hormonal fluctuations? Like, pushing harder is just going to add more stress. And it does, if it feels like your body's unfamiliar. And when it comes to like the weight gain, particularly around your middle, one of the most common symptoms of perimenopause is just the difference, like the shift to insulin sensitivity. So that's just like, it's our blood sugar, like peaks and troughs and spikes. So some of you might be listening to this and you might relate to me saying that, like, you've got a sweet tooth now that you never had before. again, I feel as though I went through this phase and it's past me, which is great. But I went through this phase of like just fancying something sweet. By nature, that's not me. I'm savoury. If I'm going to have a snack, I would rather have like some cheese and crackers, some crisps. Like sweet stuff is not really my thing. But I definitely noticed how that was changing. And then that then has this massive impact then to just overall cravings and insulin and just blood sugar being up, down, up, down. So when it's up, that's when you get like this burst of energy, feel great. When it's down, that's when it's like, oh, I need energy from somewhere. I'm craving like a certain something. So that process is rocked by the hormonal shifts in perimenopause, which then, as we know, impacts appetite and stress response and ultimately our recovery, where our body fat is stored, and it can knock on to sleep and the quality of our sleep. So what to do about it? Well, stop responding by eating less and doing more, which is the note that I've made here, and exactly what I've just touched on. Like, we can't respond to feeling that way by thinking like, okay, I'm just going to eat less and I'm just going to rein everything in, and then like that'll be the resolve of everything. I'll wake up in the morning, scales will have come back down, and I'll just go back to normal eating. Like, we know that that doesn't work, ladies. We've tried it. I actually ran through with a client last week a food diary. So from time to time, every now and then, with certain clients, always do it with new clients, and then with existing clients, we'll do a food diary. So it's very telling to take pictures of the food that you eat day to day, because instantly it gives you a visual of what you are putting inside of your body. And you're not always so proud of what you're putting inside of your body, ladies, when you see it on a visual. It's easy to put it in black and white on MyFitnessPal. It's just a number and a title. But if you look at that plate and there's no green, there's no protein, or you know the portion size would cater to a whole family, then, you know, instantly we can answer our own questions. But for this particular client, we'd been trying to nail the weekends for a couple of weeks. So Monday to Friday seemed dialed in. Ironically, Monday to Friday are so busy, so maxed out, no bandwidth. Weekends a little bit trickier because more of a flexible routine, just, you know, the busyness of mum life. Anyway, when we do the food diary, it was like a penny drop, because every Friday, and we'd sort of spoken about this before, but again, this is part of the work that we do in coaching, is that when you're in it yourself, when you're in the day-to-day and you feel it, you're doing the right thing and you're doing everything, it's really hard to pick up on blind spots. There's a reason that they're called blind spots. Like, you are blind to them. And so this client, very dialed in, very aware of smart nutrition, and has got alcohol under control, and is very consistent with training. And on a Friday, she was just leaving herself unprepared. And so rather than eating crap, which some women would do, she was just eating very little. Eating very little on a Friday because routine changes slightly on a Friday. So powering through and just getting into that cycle, like unintentionally, but in that cycle of, do you know what, I'll be okay, because I'm not in my usual work routine. So I've got a bit more time for myself. So when it's convenient, I'll grab something, I'll make something from fresh, and I'll eat well. But we know that that's never going to happen. So then the knock-on effect is the weekend. That's been the struggle the whole time. So the weekend wasn't a byproduct of the flexibility to routine or the fact that there was all of these social occasions and play dates. It was hunger from the Friday. Like, it was genuine hunger from the Friday. So putting ourselves into this position, and this was unintentional with this client, but putting yourself into the position where you think, do you know what, I'm just going to tighten everything up tomorrow. I'm going to fast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, it will catch up on you. If not later in the day, 2 days later, when you're really struggling to recover from a workout, or your sleep is interrupted. Again, I've had a couple of messages through on Instagram and a couple of conversations with different women, and I've had more than one woman say, God, I used to be able to fast. Like, that used to be my go-to, and I just can't do it now. Like, I can't hold out, and I can't stop eating. If I do fast, I can't stop eating on the other side. That is one of the most common pieces of feedback that you have to take. You have to take that as feedback from your body, is that this is no longer working. And you might know my take on this, ladies, is that we flip that fast on its head and we do dinner and done. We have a cut-off point, 6, 7 p.m. in the evening, if we can do that. Not all of the time, but just from time to time. And we give ourselves that break from ingesting food at the opposite end of the day, rather than in the morning, when actually we do need to fuel ourselves. Symptom number 3 of perimenopause that you might not be recognizing as perimenopause, but is very real. Ladies, it is our mood. It's our patience. It is just It's that tolerance for stress. You know, when we're just waking up in the morning, we're feeling more irritable or throughout the day. I've noticed it creeping on a little bit on me in the last few days because this is my week of the month. And I notice it. I'm instantly aware of it, normally right after I've snapped at one of the kids, or, you know, I've just been a little bit more short-tempered or grumpy mummy, when normally I would be, you know, more carefree. And I notice it straight away, and I've got to really check in with myself. But we just find ourselves having like this lower tolerance for like the noise and the demands and the constant, we need this, we've got to do this, the constant never-ending job list. Or also like the other side of that, like the way I've just described, really. You lose your temper 1 minute but then we're in tears the next minute. Like, it's wild how quickly our emotions can just switch from one to the next. Or just feeling a little more anxious can also be like a symptom that presents for a lot of women. So we feel and we're always trying to pin our anxiety on something, can't we? So I think we've all experienced anxiety on some level. Obviously, for some of you listening, it'll be more severe than others. For some of you, it'll be more ongoing than others. I've spoken about this in another podcast and I won't go deep. I've definitely had periods where it's been a part of my day-to-day, and that's not the case anymore. So when it creeps on, I just know what it is. I know it's the hormonal changes, but this can really lead to lower confidence, ladies, and it can really have us just like, you know, when you don't feel like yourself. It's just like, it's that combination of it all, isn't it? Like the irritability and the feeling a bit anxious and the being a bit tearful, but then we're also a bit short. And it's like, but then maybe we've had a stressful day in work, or maybe we didn't get the best sleep last night, and we're looking for all of these reasons why. And then maybe we berate ourselves because then we ate in a certain way because we felt like this. And it's like, okay. But if we can just acknowledge that actually we're going through a bit of a change here, like our body is literally evolving, and hormones that we've always relied upon to keep us steady and sane and at a level are now fluctuating, and we can't see that happening, so we can't directly control it. If we can give ourselves that grace, then we're able to better take care of ourselves. So like recognizing it without any shame. You know, if you could burst into tears at the drop of a hat, like I will just openly talk about it. And I think that we've got to be able to recognize the way that we're feeling and not carry any shame around it. But really, once you do recognise it, it's building in that regulation before you get to the point of burnout. So if you don't already, I know I've spoken about this before, and again, I'll always tell you this, ladies, you will hear me repeat the same message on here because I'm talking about an ecosystem and a way of building a thriving lifestyle. And so it'll always come back to these key pillars. But I also believe from a mindset perspective that we serve ourselves best when we do listen to the information and the things that we need to take in on repeat. We don't want to be jumping from one hot topic to the next. That gives us a buzz in the moment. But we would be better feeding our subconscious on loop the things that serve us best. This is why I will always say, if you enjoyed this episode, save it, listen to it again, send it to somebody who will also benefit from listening to it and listening to it again, because that is the mindset work. The mindset work is that constant reminder, and sometimes it is a podcast or some other sort of audio that just helps us to articulate what's going on. But if you don't already, I strongly recommend downloading like a period tracker of some sort and track your menstrual cycle and almost preempt where these weeks of the month are going to land. I'm even going to the extremes now of, I've got a photo shoot coming up next week. Just a couple of like casual photos, nothing crazy. But the guy had originally asked me if he could do this week. And this was only 2 weeks ago, actually. It's only just been put in the diary. And I was like, oh, hang on a second, just look at my calendar. And I was like, nope, menstrual cycle week. Like, we just can't, because my energy, I even feel like it changes the way that I look, which I know sounds probably very vain. Is anyone else listening? Is this just me? Does anyone else feel like your face completely changes as well? I don't know whether it's just like because you look tired. And I've definitely read on this about how your skin can change through menopause. And I'm obviously only 43, so I'm not imagining that I'm in the throes of menopause by any means. But I definitely feel as though just my whole exterior and interior, just it's like for that 72-hour window, we look a little bit more bloated, a little bit more round around the middle. Some of us carry more water retention than others, and some women, myself one of them, I feel like it almost alters the look of my face just for this moment in time. But the point that I'm trying to share is know where your cycle is going to land. Like if you can avoid taking heavy meetings on those days, like don't put them in your calendar. If you know that you're going to need to book or schedule time for yourself, whether it's lunch breaks to get the walk or just to eat properly, or like it's imperative that you finish work on time on those days, like if you can take pressure off yourself, that 72-hour window or maybe that 4-day window around menstrual cycle, if you have the ability to do that, do it, because protecting your energy around that time is so vitally important. And I've had a client check in this week and she said, menstrual cycle due, so I just need to be conscious of cravings. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to reframe that. The cravings hit when we are not well rested enough. So rather than like almost preempting cravings and wanting to be on top of cravings, instead I want you to build in more rest, because if you're well rested, you're better hydrated, and we're eating as we've spoken about to support menstrual cycle, then the cravings won't be as loud and noisy, because it's the way that we continue trying to run on empty even though we're on our menstrual cycle. Like it just doesn't work. And so then 8 o'clock at night or whatever time it is during the day, actually we find ourselves craving chocolate and we're like, oh well, it's fine, it's, you know, it's not me, it's my hormones and it's menstrual cycle, so it's completely normal, so I'm going to eat the chocolate. And it's like, okay, but if you are in a stage of wanting to elevate to your most healthy, fabulous, leanest self, that's not really going to work on a monthly basis, is it? That the chocolate cravings uncontrollably kick in. We want to be able to arm ourselves ahead of time and like build in some methods of like better regulating ahead of time. Also, just easy ways to sort of like, again, lower that irritability and anxiousness and maybe just even feeling teary. Get outside. Cannot stress this enough. Get outside and get some general movement and fresh air. Strength training also actually is really good, ladies. So against what people might think, strength training is actually very stabilizing, very calming for your central nervous system versus, let's say, HIIT, which obviously lights our central nervous system up to the max. Your strength training should actually help to better regulate your central nervous system. But honestly, bottom line on that one is like, stop expecting yourself to cope the way that you did 10 years ago. And if you do need to go to your GP because maybe feelings of anxiety are starting to get just a little bit unbearable or feeling a little bit out of control, be sure to mention. Like, I'm not here again to go too deep on this one, but it's not common practice for our general practitioners in the UK to be up to speed on perimenopause and menopause. Like, it's just not part of the qualification. And so some doctors will be, some doctors won't. So like if you're calling your GP or your local doctors, ask, like, is there anybody in the surgery who is more specialised in menopause or women's hormones? Ask to speak to a specific doctor. And if you go in and you present with symptoms of anxiety, and I say this because I've spoken to so many women who've just been instantly given medication for anxiety, but they're mid-40s and it's like, there's probably more going on here. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not here to give medical advice, far from it, but I think we need to know our own body, we need to know what's going on, and we need to be able to present that when we go to see a GP and all of a sudden we're feeling anxious and it's like, this is more than just me worrying about the kids' schoolwork or whatever it is. This is, I think my hormones are starting to change and this is just a symptom that's presenting, but I think what's going on is the start of perimenopause. Another really common symptom, and I can't do the episode, ladies, without touching on this one, but it is brain fog and forgetfulness, because it's wild. It's had me feeling worried many a time. Like, I, on a regular basis, tell my husband that my biggest fear is losing my memory. It just genuinely is, and I could even get upset just thinking about it. But brain fog and forgetfulness is such a symptom of perimenopause. And if you dig a little bit deeper into this, then you will go down the whole avenue of, you know, brain-gut connection. And this is where during perimenopause and during our 40s, we've really got to be tuned into our gut health, making sure we're getting enough fibre, making sure maybe that we're even eating our meals a certain way, that we are reducing inflammatory oils, that we're reducing our alcohol intake, because this gut-brain barrier, it really comes into play. And so if you're struggling with brain fog, you're struggling with forgetfulness, it's not to say that taking care of your gut is going to relieve you of that completely, but it will significantly help, like significantly. So again, around the time of menstrual cycle, maybe when you feel as though you're craving a little bit more, and we give ourselves leeway, don't we? So we're like, you know what, I am going to have a takeaway because I'm on and I can't be bothered cooking, or I am going to get the grab bag of crisps, or I'm going to eat in a certain way because I'm on. And so we feel entitled to it. And whilst there's no harm in that, that is not self-care. Like, we've got to be very, very honest with ourselves. That's not self-care. What we need more during that time of the month is that's when we need the good nutrition. But maybe we need to eat the bigger portion size, because maybe we do need that little bit more fuel. But I'm talking about a bigger portion size of the good stuff, not letting the crap and the junk creep on your plate, or eating a microwave meal just because it's time of the month and we feel wiped out. Like, I get it. It is an effort to eat in a certain way when we feel like we're craving in a certain way, but a lot of that is just, it's this disconnect. And if you're inside of Thriving Women, you're one of my clients, you'll know all about this and the way in which we approach menstrual cycle with our nutrition. But the brain fog and the forgetfulness, a lot of the time, it can be a symptom of poor gut health. And so we want to look at that. But it looks like, very simply, just like losing your train of thought, struggling to focus, just feeling like very mentally cluttered. So, like the to-do list that normally you can juggle and spin, like now we just can't. Like, and I've spoken about this again inside of the community, and I'll pass it forward here, but just allow yourself to close some tabs in your brain. Like, genuinely allow yourself to just shut down some of the tabs that really, it's not mission critical. Like, if that doesn't happen right now or today, it's, I'm going to write it on a piece of paper so we don't forget it. God forbid, we're talking about forgetfulness. I'm going to write, and I'm going to come back to it in 48 hours when I've actually got the capacity to think about it. Because, again, we want to be capable, don't we? We want to be capable of juggling it all. I know that I do. And it's quite upsetting to feel that we can't. But it's not that we can't juggle it all. We just can't juggle it all at once. So we've got to be willing to compartmentalize and close some of the tabs in our brain. And a lot of the ladies that I speak to, actually, they are presenting to the world that they're organised, they're on the shit, they've got everything together, but internally they are feeling so foggy, like on every level, like everything just feels clouded. And at any given moment, they either want to kill someone or burst into tears. Like, it's those extremes, and it's the fogginess, and it's everything. But then it's walk into work, big smile, shoulders relaxed, we got this. And then you get home and you're burnt out. You are burnt out because you've been having to mask these symptoms all day. So, and maybe that's going to be the case. Maybe some work environments won't get that you're going through hormonal changes. So we've got to get better at arming ourselves to allow for us to stay better regulated, for these symptoms to not feel so overpowering and so heavy. And honestly, like, if you take anything from this podcast, I want you to remember that when we talk about this really, it moves us away from the scale weight, because the scale weight is going to continue to be your biggest bugbear if that is all you focus on when you've got some of these symptoms going on in the background. Like, address some of these symptoms, put some of these practical ways to better regulate into practice, and then continuing with the journey to maybe drive down the scale weight or look a certain way or bring your waistline in or whatever the goal is. The journey onto that is going to feel so much easier, but we're making it harder for ourselves, obsessing about the scales, masking all of these symptoms, and just trying to trudge through mud, because that's what it feels like. And the biggest principle inside of Thriving Women is you put your health at the forefront. So as a coach, every plan, every decision, every calorie goal, everything is with your health at the forefront. So we want to lead with the healthiest version, the most thriving, energized, lit up, confident version of you. Whatever number that comes out at on the scales, dress size, whatever, so be it. We can strive towards the numbers, but the decisions that we're making, the habits, the behaviours, everything that we're putting in place, this is what we're striving for. Your health is at the forefront of all of our decisions. Me putting you on a 1,200 calorie diet is not considered in your health. You're a 40-year-old woman and you're on 1,200 calories. That is not me considering your stress tolerance or your hormone profile or your best interests. That's me trying to get you a quick result so you can go and tell everyone how great I am. Maybe I'll get a transformation picture that I can post on my page, and then other people will come and they'll get more of the same. But what happens when you then rebound? You are then left questioning yourself. You are then left thinking you're broken. Because Nick's plan clearly worked because I lost all of the weight. Well, it doesn't work unless you can sustain it. You've got to remember that, ladies. So inside of Thriving Women, whether you like it or not, your health is at the forefront of every decision that we make, because that's the only thing that's going to hold up and stand the test of time. And honestly, off on a tangent a little, but with the new craze now of GLP-1s, like being lean and looking a certain way, that was always the representation of like a woman who made sacrifice and took care of herself and had discipline, and that's just no longer the case. That's no longer the case now, because you can just go and put a needle in your body and achieve the weight loss. And I honestly believe that longer term, what people will now aspire to, it's not the goal weight, it's not the certain number. We will aspire and be inspired by the women who have muscle on their body, have great energy, are healthy, in control. You know, they are thriving. Like no amount of quick fix or any jab can achieve that. That is what takes consistency in taking care of yourself. Something that you'll never regret, but it's a bit of a different journey. Off on a tangent, but I really wanted to make a point on that as it came into my mind, because we've got to stop judging ourselves, ladies, as like, oh, I'm all over the place, or oh, I'm useless today at this, or like if you are going through changes, let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge that and just switch up the strategy, because brain fog, it's not a sign that you can't cope. It's a signal from the body. It's feedback. I say this about everything, whether you wake up bloated, whether you feel a certain kind of way. If you've got brain fog, it is a symptom. It's feedback from the body. We can choose to ignore it, or we can be our own biggest cheerleaders and get on side with ourselves and recognize that, like, okay, maybe something needs to change here. Maybe I do need to go and take that 10-minute walk. Maybe I do need to get that early night. Maybe I do need to set clearer boundaries. Maybe I do need to clear my calendar a little bit more, or close some of the tabs in my mind, or let my hubby just take care of the kids tonight and not stress myself that everything needs to be done a certain perfect way, because we've got to be able to care for ourselves first. And so on that note, I've realised that this episode is actually a little more lengthy than I had anticipated. I think it's going to be a 2-part. So this is part 1 of the symptoms that are biting you on the butt that maybe you are not acknowledging as being perimenopause. Part 2 to follow. But if this episode has already hit home, you realise that like, oh, I just feel as though I'm constantly falling off track, but actually maybe I need a different approach. Maybe this feedback is, it's not me not trying hard enough. It's just that like genuinely things have started to change and I now need a different approach, and I need to understand what that should look like. And I'd love the support and I'd love the structure and the accountability. That is what we do inside of Time to Thrive. So that is the group coaching element of Thriving Women. And it is genuinely, ladies, for women like yourself who want to feel strong, supported. You want education. You don't want to just be given a follow this and get the results and then you come off and, you know, it's back to normal life and you rebound. You want to understand not just what decision to make, but why. Why are we making these decisions? How is that going to support me? If I'm presented with A and B, which is the better option? What does each of them mean? How does each of them impact me and my results? But most of all, if you want to build up consistency again, without extremes, without punishment, ladies, without punishing ourselves into a certain number, then come and join us. Drop me a message on Instagram, send me an email through the link below. But more than anything, don't delay. Don't delay what's the saying? Don't delay until tomorrow what you can do now, especially when it comes to your health, your wellness, your fitness. It's not a luxury, it's not a nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. And if you know that your body is changing and you are feeling any kinds of way, or maybe you've just got a question or some feedback on today's episode, I would love to hear from you, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Nickel Grain Podcast.